Hello, everybody. We're going to mix things up this week, do something a little different than our normal behind the scenes. Just a note, we'll have new behind the scenes stuff coming in the weeks to come. And next week, we'll do a little bit on how we set up this particular type of shoot that I'm going to show you now. This is something different for use in a drone. Now, I'm sure you've seen the things where somebody goes through and takes photographs with a drone, makes video footage, flies around bridges and things like that. What we're going to talk about tonight is something a little bit different. This is using a set mission within the Autel controller. Now, the drone I use is an Autel Evo Pro 2 6K. This is the version 3 kit, so the controller isn't the one that uses a phone. This has its own screen. It allows you to set up different types of missions. Waypoints are one, but this is a rectangular mission. What this allows you to do is create a grid over an area, and the drone will then take off and fly that grid. Now, I live in the Northeast. I wanted to make sure that after the last storm, I didn't have a lot of trees that were down. Now, as you can see from this overhead shot, I do have trees that are down. You can also see I have little critters that wander around the property. But these are normal trees that are just down. They aren't anything new from the storm. My concern was anything big that had recently fallen. So what this particular mission does is it aims the camera down at 90 degrees and then flies over that area, flying down, turning, and then coming back autonomously to create visuals of the area beneath it. Again, you can see here is the stone wall between my property and my neighbor's property. Again, we have these trails of most likely deer wandering through. But the interest to me here is I have high tension wires that run through my property. So even though they aren't my concern, I'd like to know if there's anything that fell on them. Given the amount of area that they cut around these poles, as you'll see, the odds of anything hitting it and causing an issue would be very low. But I still like to know what the area looks like around the poles, just to be sure. And so we have a bunch of trees that are just down as a normal course or were cut down. But as this went through, and I only let it go down and back once for two reasons. One, as you can see from these pictures, the day was a little on the overcast side, so it wasn't giving me the best view. In some instances, you can see with these shadows and things, it's almost hard to tell if it's a shadow or a tree from the distance. This was all taken at 197 feet up. But going down and back, the winds started to come up, and I don't want to fly her into too high a wind. She's good up to 27 miles an hour, but I'm flying her autonomously, so I'd feel a little more comfortable as the winds went up that I was flying it by hand. But I walked it all the way down to the end of my property. This is the back border of my property with another road behind me. And yes, that is a dirt road. That's why it looks like that. And then once it hit there, it turned around. As you can see, the road is now down here. The drone has turned and is now headed back. And as I said, I only let it go down and back the one trip because I wanted to see what the property looked like. Like, for example, I have an old dead tree here that I'll probably take down this year. Um, but the drone continued its flight back. Now, I'm not sure the exact distance that it flew down and back. However, it did take 68 photographs along the way. And I'm not showing you the exact series because that's a little boring. We'll do a bit of that in a minute. But again, you can see the trails through and some trees that had fallen where they actually tore up from the roots. Again, I'm in New England. A lot of my trees are pine trees. The way a pine tree grows is it doesn't have a really deep root. It grows out more than it does down. So unfortunately, when the ground gets very wet and a wind comes up, like in a good rainstorm, the ground will soften up and the trees have a tendency to fall over. Again, still coming back. And this is why we've got such a big area around these lines. As you can see in this photograph, there's no trees anywhere near the poles themselves. And if this looks familiar, it's because there's the trails when they came in, and here's the trails coming back out. So as they're coming back up, that's the same set of trails that we saw on the way in. You can see even the connectors on the lines themselves, the guy lines holding these poles up to make sure that they're safe, and the 3 power poles that I have up. So again, the purpose of a mission like this is for land survey. But the goal of a survey like this is to see what's going on the property. Now, if you're a drone pilot, you might want to look into places that have vacation homes. In my area, there are several places that have homes that are only occupied over the summer. So it's possible that a homeowner might want this kind of work done over their home so they can take a look and see how everything looks before they come up, and they can do any work that needs to be done to address the issues either before they come up or know what they need to do when they come up. So let's go back to our first image again, just to give you an idea. In a little bit of a slideshow format, you can see how often it took the pictures, just to give you a feel for how the drone was operating and how often it was taking pictures. But with all of the drone footage I've seen and all the things people have talked about, uh, even when it comes down to doing inspections, I have never seen this type of photography listed. Now, this isn't anything that's got video to it, and it isn't anything that really needs to have a video format to it, because what you're really looking at is these individual areas of the ground to see if there's trees down, if there's anything blocking a pathway, for example. Is there anything that needs to be addressed? Um, in one instance, I had a tree that snapped and landed on other trees. Now, I would want to get that down before the wind came up and it caused more damage as it fell the rest of the way. So those are the types of things you're looking at with these types of photographs. And again, it's very simple with a lot of drones on the market. But again, I was using the Autel to lay out a path for the camera to just take pictures as it goes. It's very simple to set up. It's very simple to kick off and let it go. Of course, if you're doing that, make sure your drone has a proper height so that it's not going to run into anything, as well as the appropriate obstacle avoidance. One thing I will point out is at this point right here, the property starts to drop off and go downhill. Yet you'll notice that the drone kept its height above ground at 197 feet the entire way down. So that's an advantage of having these types of missions uh, pre-programmed, that the drone will take care of itself as far as where it needs to be. You still have to keep the drone in sight. You still have to make sure that the drone, if it looks like it's having an issue, you can override and bring it back, which is very easy to do with the autel. You just hold down on the home button, and it'll fly right back to you. But you need to keep this in mind as you're doing these kinds of missions. But again, a different type of photography, a different way of looking at uses of drones that may not be something that you've thought of before. So I hope it gives you a little bit of background on a different way to use a drone. It's not one of the more traditional things you'll see on the internet, and not a more traditional inspection, but it allows you to see your land and see if there's anything that needs to be addressed on the land without the need of somebody walking the property. Anybody could be able to sit down and go through these photographs and determine what the land looks like, even if they can't, for whatever reason, walk the land. And that includes me, because as we get down here into these back areas down by this roadway, this is pretty much swampland. So while I want to get this tree out of here, I'm not 100% sure I'm going to be able to do it, because the land down there gets so soggy once winter passes that it may not be possible for me to even get down there and handle the tree. But again, it allows me to see things now that I'll need to address in the spring. And then when I do it again in the spring and summer, it'll allow me to see if all the trees look healthy, because by that point they'll have had their leaves and things blossoming. If there's anything I need to trim. And I'll also be able to get a better view of how much of the area in the back there does have that bog-like quality to it, much easier than having to walk the property and wearing boots, try to step carefully so that I don't get stuck, and check out the property that way. So just another way of looking at things, another service that I offer, so that if you're interested and you would like to have me come out and do one of these over your property, let me know. And if you're a drone pilot, this gives you another option that you can put into your arsenal of services that you can offer to people, so that they can see what their property looks like and have a better idea of what's going on around their property. Hope you found this valuable, and I will talk to you guys next week, where we'll actually look at what it takes to lay out one of these from the view of the controller itself. So everybody have a good night, and I will talk to you next week.